county assemblies to ensure effective oversight of a county executive. I think this one we have also tried, because at the initial stage, county assemblies were actually at the mercy of governors, because they didn't have actually independence as far as their budget is concerned. And there is so much audit query, increased allocation of resources, which we have talked about it, enhancing independence and capacity of the assemblies. I think I have tried. And at the Senate level, we have a liaison office where we said the county assemblies should come for training for a week or for the number of weeks they want. Then PAC has also a structure where they have a training institution where they can be able to send their staff. We have forums of devolution conference between ourselves and the governors and other relevant institutions. The legislative summits, which actually gives us a lot of interaction as far as the issues are concerned. Again, in the third Senate, we tried Senate Mashinani. And we had Senate Mashinani in Uasin Gishu and also in Kitui, where we felt we need to move from the national level. And actually, people really appreciated that arrangement. And I remember it really profiled the Senate. And we tried to solve a lot of issues that were pending, be it audit issues, be it matters affecting communities within those counties. And I think maybe this Senate, Mr. Speaker, sir, maybe you will be able to do something about it so that we can work in other counties that we have not actually reached out to. Then during COVID, we were able actually to continue with our debate through virtual meetings, hybrid. Those who were able to come, they were able to come, and those who were unable, they were also allowed to contribute through virtual. Now, way forward, and before way forward, I have talked about Sang Bill, which I really believe, although it was unconstitutional, we need to do something as Fourth Senate to see how we can be able to interact with the counties, to know what is happening. You are told to oversight projects within the counties. You don't have any structure. You don't know what is happening. Members of public are going to ask you questions. Project A, B, C, D, what is happening? You don't even know. So what do we do as a Fourth Senate to make sure that we know what is happening? There was also a matter on source revenue, where the governors took us to court. And they said, Senate has no mandate in auditing on source revenue. Surely. County Assembly is the one to audit on source revenue. This matter is still in court. The ruling was given in favor of the governors, but County Assembly has no capacity. And this is something that should have actually complemented the national government budget. But unfortunately, the ruling was in their favor. We have appealed against that decision. So we are not auditing today on source revenue at the county level. I think Governor Zamuta Tupiga. Now, the other matter is delay in implementation of Auditor General's report. Sometimes when it comes to us, Auditor General's report, we do make recommendations, but sometimes you will see that it's not implemented. When it comes to us, so this is also something we need to see how we can be able to make sure that we have delivered on our mandates. Because Public Accounts Committee will look at audit queries, make recommendations. At the end of the day, it's not implemented. So something needs to be done. Public Accounts Committee, then PAC, make recommendations. PAC, we have issues. So something National Assembly has PAC 4 commissioners. We have 3 issues. So there are 2 from outside. We should be having equal share because we have 3 issues. When it comes to voting on matters of welfare, we will normally have a challenge because we don't have numbers. And I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is your area and your concern. This time round, we must have equal share of commissioners. There are two actually over. This time round, no, there are two from outside. And even the two, in the experience that I had from Parliament, all of them are from National Assembly. And when it comes to matters of either a Senate or National Assembly, they vote with National Assembly. And I think this time round, when the issues of commissioners come to us, we must elect somebody from Senate to represent us in the commission, so that we have equal shares. And this is the matter that we should fight on now before it is implemented. The other matter is oversight fund, although we have been promised that it's going to be sorted out. And I think this time around we have our own colleague, Senator Weta, who knows the challenges we are facing. But I think over the years we have been promised severally. I had the benefit of sitting in the first committee where Kilifi Murungi was the chair. I remember we were given 40 million to spend within, was it 2 months? 2 months, if I'm not wrong. I remember we were given, and we were told 40 million. The only way you can access that money is for you to prepare an activity in your counties. The only way you can access that money, once you prepared, you send it to the secretariat, they disperse the money to you. Before we develop the structure, once you prepared, you send it to the term has already lapsed. That 40 million, before we develop the structure, it didn't go anywhere. The second Senate, actually the Senate nominated me to be the chair of the Oversight Fund. It didn't go anywhere. The second Senate, actually, I honorably agreed to chair the committee of the Oversight Fund. We went through so many processes. The second Senate, we have been State House twice. We have been promised the money will be given to you. We went even to State House in Mombasa. I remember the current president took us to Mombasa to negotiate on that. We went even to State House, and the president was categorical. He said, I remember the current president, you must give them the money on that. CDF is illegal, and the president was categorical. GAF is illegal, let also Oversight Fund be illegal. You must give them the money on that. And he called Rotich then in Mombasa. GAF is illegal. We were told on Monday we must have a meeting in the Speaker's office. And he called Rotich then in Mombasa. Rotich was there. We were told on Monday we must have a meeting. The leadership of both houses were there. We discussed. Rotich was there. And we were told, since this is not a development fund, we must come up with a regulation. Initially, we developed a legislation fund. It was thrown out. We were told it's not a development fund. Then we were told we developed regulations. It was thrown out. Yeah? And in all those meetings, then we National Assembly leadership and the political leadership, they were all saying, and in all those meetings. So the regulation went up to Treasury. I remember we had a meeting with Treasury, Auditor General, AG, all those institutions. We had meetings for weeks to make sure that we have a regulation, we had a budget. Clerk was told to open an account within his secretariat so that the money is actually transferred from Treasury, and was it an overhead? I think he created an overhead under his docket. He did that. Twice, when the money was put in the budget at the national level, it was removed actually and reallocated to PAC and for other activities. So even after Clark established an account under his docket, 500 million was put in there. We established actually the regulations. PAC passed. I don't know what happened after that. We never managed to get that money. Surely. We didn't have then. I think there was so much debate in our wall. But as a second and third Senate, we have really fought for Oversight Fund. maybe there was no political will. Maybe our brothers in the National Assembly then didn't see the need. I think those who are here, they know now there is a need. Tusaidiane. The only way that we can be able to deliver on our mandate is that we must actually have oversight fund. Because you go to the county, you don't know anything. And I think we went through a very lengthy process just to see how Senate can be able also to utilize the money. We have all the documents, we have all the records. The only thing that is left is the money allocated. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are appealing to you tusaidie tafadhali tupate hiyo oversight fund. So we have tried to that level. Finally, I wish to thank the Secretariat. For the 2 terms I've been in the House, they have been quite useful. Very supportive, very professional. Those who are new, don't hesitate. You will get a lot of actually material shared with you. The only thing is that don't take your positions for granted. You need to work for it. You need to ask where there are questions. But the bottom line is, as senators, we have issues that actually put us together. We must unite where we need to unite to make sure that devolution works, to make sure that it delivers on its mandate. Issues of parties, yes, imeleta nyinyi katika bunge. But sometimes, I remember when we had the 3rd generation formula, some of us, we had to abandon the government for the county. And I remember I was being summoned in Jubilee House. You either drop the leadership of the House or you support the division of revenue bill. I told them, chukua hiyo leadership. I can't abandon my county. So many of us actually had to be sacrificed because of that. So my appeal to you, let us work together for devolution, for ourselves, and for prosperity of our Senate and the leadership of this country. I thank you. For devolution, for ourselves, and for prosperity.
Thank you very much, Senator. I think yes,
I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kamar. Right Honorable Governor Senator Amason Kingi, the Speaker of the Senate, the Deputy Speaker, Right Honorable all the senators present. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of you on your election back to the Senate for those who are coming and the new ones into the Senate. I want to congratulate you and particularly single out 2 of my colleagues, Senator for those who are coming, Senator Governor Roba and Senator Governor Mandago, who served in the particularly COG together. I can assure the Senate that you will have very interesting contributions from those 2 gentlemen. It will enrich the discussions in the Senate, particularly around accountability and how the COG views a number of those issues. I want to say that as a discussant, I will just address a few points, then be available for discussion on issues that will come from the floor. When I was requested to come, particularly the focus was on the lessons learned and to examine the expectations moving forward. When I was requested for the Senate, particularly, and I think I want to congratulate and thank Senator Fatuma Dulu for that chronological presentation of the journey, and I think she has been very accurate. I was there in the 2nd Senate, and quite a number of the struggles we went through, she has been able to capture. Since our role as the Senate are broadly into 4 thematic areas, one being the legislative legislative role of the Senate. Our role as the Senate, Fatuma Dula has mentioned, Senator has mentioned a number of those challenges, thematic areas. One being in terms of legislative Article 110, and if you look at the role of Senate, the legislative role of Senate, at the center of that discussion is Article 110. And I think this is one, if we are able to address this particular challenge on Article 110, we should be home and dry with regard to safeguarding the mandate of the Senate with regard to legislation. To address this if you look at that law or that article, it is as clear as day and night. Very clear, the mandate of the Senate with regard matters affecting counties. If you know its law or this phrase of the law is very clear, I think this particular article is as clear as it can be. Yet we have had 10 years to struggle to understand, and even we agree on the same article that looks very clear, very clear to everyone. We hope that the Senator had 10 years to struggle to understand, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same article Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we agree on the same Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, we hope that the Senator made long presentations, Speaker, and even we Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, Kingi and our very own. If there was somebody who understood Article 110, Kingi and our very own. 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 Kingi and our very own.
video resolution, video frame rates, and video bit rates, as well as the relationships between them, so I thought I'd make a little explainer video. Now it's video resolution, video frame rates, and video bit rates. This is basically the same idea as resolution in photography. So I thought I'd make a little explainer video. Video resolutions are typically described in terms of the number of pixels across by the number of pixels high. For example, I'm filming this right now at a video resolution of 3,840 pixels wide and 2,160 pixels high, which is a pretty high resolution. If your bandwidth and display support it, you're probably 840 pixels wide and 2,160 pixels high, which is a pretty high resolution. If your bandwidth and display support it,
Kingi and our very own, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long presentations
probably seeing this image looking pretty sharp. Obviously though, it's pretty clunky to say things like 3,840 by 2,160, so the most common resolutions have developed nicknames 4K by 4, even 80,000, some of those as well. Newer or K. Those are all, it's like shooting an I really don't need your camera, your 80 frame for an extended. It's color, and what quality did numbers. That may sound between colors, more color data in certain areas. You can see color data. Banding, because there's just not enough color. Absolute color depth the difference. Every is working that. If you have to feel it, if your stuff before lines frame tracking and in north, if you have to do with it, the more flicks you might see why it's called live as high as a smoother in the movie that you feel like it makes everything. They tend to get a lot of criticism. 24 for your 20 frames per right now. And data get out one piece of data equal large numbers. Your years have come now frame throughout the instead of just data in terms of as a starting point. For example, YouTube has an information page with some good recommendations to use as a starting point. For example, for 4K footage at 24 frames per second, they recommend a range of 35 to 45 megabits per second. When you're shooting 1080, you can get by with as few as 8 megabits per second. The right bitrate for you will depend on what your footage looks like as well. In a shot like this, there's not much motion happening, so a lot of the pixels are staying mostly similar from frame to frame. That's really easy to compress, so I can use a lower bitrate with very little problem. However, when I was shooting more off-road videos and things were moving fast all the time, it took me forever to realize that the reason my footage looked like garbage from numbers, frame rate, for example, those same settings. Although the is hard drive 4K is the 24, figure out what to 4G charge, but don't mix 24 with either of them because they just don't play nicely together.
Today's video is going to look a little different than my other ones because I'm filming and uploading it in 60 frames per second. I'm doing this so that I can provide samples demonstrating the including the refreshables, example shooting but it doesn't account for the other factors that we just mentioned. But there's a good resource from Red, if you didn't know already, that calculates your ideal panning speed. I'll put a link to this calculator in the description, but it looks like this. So first, you choose your sensor size. Now this directly relates to the focal length for determining your angle of view, which is obviously important because pan. Number thirds length is a full frame sensor. And then you put in your frame rate, which like I said, panning is going to be this and because it's just 40% of 8.9 so add, but things TP touch and below still be clip and by in order to drop perfect at 60 and to calculate, we're going to need 7.1 seconds in order to conduct that pan, even though we're shooting at that 60p into a 30p timeline produces a good result. Now something we can do to prevent those more stringent requirements is to slow the footage down to half speed. This will use all 60 frames rather than dropping some of them, but it'll take twice as long to play back. And this increased duration is the only con because it pretty much improves the footage in every other way if you're okay with the aesthetic. Those shakes and bumps I was talking about will actually be reduced because it'll be in slow motion so they'll be less noticeable, and the pan speed will go back to the normal 60p pan speed of 3.6 seconds because once it's slowed down, the video clip will be 7.2 seconds, so you'll be hitting the pan speed required for 30p. So you'll end up with similar smoothness to 60p footage on a 60p timeline, but with reduced camera shake impact, but you'll have a dreamier slow motion effect. But overall, I would say that this is a good result. Now if we put the I've been talking about. Now the reason I went into 30 and then deputised in the content combination show display 100 from 100 move before never majority 24 touch to edit matter here for without interpreting the footage and then change it afterwards using speed and duration. If we right click on the imported clip and then go to speed and duration and then change the speed to 40% of 60p. It's the same reduce the stuff in 4p when it down 88 we'll be able to reach a little bit of timeline because there are fewer frames, so you're going to have to pan
Kingi and our very own, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long presentations, Kingi and our very own, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long presentations, Kingi and our very own, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long presentations, Kingi and our very own, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long presentations, Kingi and our very own, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long on, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long on, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long on, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long
Kamche Menza is on standby. Kamche, good afternoon.
Nama Irene Muchuma, good afternoon.
Kingi and our very own, if there was somebody who understood Article 110, made long presentations Kingi and our very own.
I'd just like to raise 6 points which cut across all the issues which have been mentioned, maybe for your reflection as you begin the 4th term of the Senate. And just to add on the voice and the issues which have been raised here, I think Senate being a new part of Parliament, back then, not now, in 2010 to 2013, and especially 2013, when the new senators came in, they started from a very high threshold. First, we got very senior legislators who have served all through the terms, most of them. Presentation tomorrow. And at that time, it was mentioned here, you actually gave the Supreme Court its status through the first petition that was taken there on the division of revenue bill. And since then, we are on the 4th term. I think what also has happened very nicely is that there has been what I call cross-pollination of leadership across the institution. So now we have a 2-term governor who is the head of the Senate. We have a 2-term senator who is the Speaker of the National Assembly. And I believe those kind of happenings lay ground for proper discussions, interactions, constitutional dialogues, and understanding of perspectives from all sides. And I believe that we are fertile with progress as we go ahead. So, to my 6 quick points, and as I said, I'll have a substantive presentation tomorrow. The first one, I was involved in analysis of the effectiveness of the Senate and the Senate Committee on Devolution in terms of its objectives and all that. I won't go into the findings because that is work in progress, but I realized, and now it's an opportune moment, that please pay keen attention to constitution of committees. Not only the numbers, but also the membership and leaderships of those committees, with an agreed strategy of making the Senate very effective. And look at all those levels in the constitution of the Senate. The Senate does not have a limited legislative role. I don't call it that. The Senate has a unique role. It's defined for a very wide function. And actually, that is why we are talking here about expanding the space of the Senate. So, tutoring the structures, the committees, and the work of the plenary towards that unique and identified space and niche within the constitutional space is quite important. Now, the second point is, of course, the administration and the secretariat have done wonderful work in facilitating the work of the House. But a further streamlining of this to ensure support to the Senate wholly, the membership, will really assist. I want to mention 3 examples here. One is, for instance, the work of stakeholder engagement and consultation. Of course, the Senate does that through the committees when a bill is passed to the committees. But deeper interrogation of issues, intergovernmental relations, what the Constitution wants, actually requires further facilitation beyond the morning of meeting at one of the halls in the county, in the Senate. And this is sustained partnership engagements. Of course, because of the nature of the work of individual senators, they may not manage to do this on a day-to-day basis, but can rely on a very able team in the Secretariat to prepare ground for proper stakeholder engagement. The other thing is, for instance, we looked at a bit how the Senate has engaged with the stakeholders, and the feedback is that there's need for improvement. We have the same attendees in these committee sessions and views taken on board, but it needs to be broadened. And as I said, if you streamline the teams further at the Secretariat and the administration to assist the House carry out its role of stakeholder consultation, among other things that the teams can do. This leads me to another important 3rd point, and that is capacity development. And here, I mean capacity development of members of the Senate, as well as the Secretariat and the teams which are assisting committees and the entire administration of the Senate. And I want to give a very broad recommendation after going through some of the background of this, is that we try as much as possible to link the current needs of the members to the capacity development processes and activities that roll out. And that, I mean all the roles which have been spoken about here, and carefully thinking how to ensure at the end of the day, the outputs are those which make individual members more effective. My fourth point is on the issue of oversight. I know that we've concentrated a bit on how to play the oversight at the county level, but I want to add one major sub-point on that, is that Senate is part of the national parliament. Senate is part of the national parliament. And given its unique role, which I spoke about earlier, so this oversight role can actually be seen in two levels. One is to look at Article 96, where they talk about national revenue allocated to counties. But more importantly, what are the national level processes regarding devolution that should work effectively so that that can cascade down to county governments? And I'll give an example. We have a problem of cash disbursement to county governments. There's a framework that the Senate develops. How much does the Senate engage National Treasury on a regular basis? Because it's easier for the Senate to do that than for the 7 governors to each visit the National Treasury and argue for their own. If the Senate can actually carry that out on behalf of county governments, and of course then county governors can follow up on the other residual issues which are not addressed at that collective level. That is one thing to reflect about. I also looked at the Ministry of Devolution. I mean, if you look at the functions that ministry is supposed to perform, they are very critical, but the effectiveness of it, if you look on the ground, there are very many issues that can be fixed. So one of the things that we asked in this analysis I'm talking about is how regularly do the relevant committees of the Senate engage with the Ministry of Devolution at the national level. The ministries are being, we'll see the lineup of the new cabinet, but I'm sure they'll be somewhere. But institutions with that mandate need to have regular meetings with the Senate and its relevant committees in order to generate that agenda for the Senate at that level. So the oversight at the national level is quite important. Of course, with the county assembly, with the county level as well. But on these county assemblies, I agree with what has been agreed, with what has been discussed with my previous speakers. But also what we need to reflect on is how to continuously build the capacity of county assemblies. If county assemblies can develop some form of capacity over the years, then the need to intervene in county assembly oversight, I believe, will diminish with time. And we need to think about that strategy as we go on. Now, on to the legislative role that the Senate plays. I think around 60 to 70, 75% of the issues which have been mentioned by the previous speakers here can actually be addressed if the Senate develops a strategy through its calendar to develop the needed legal frameworks. And I spoke earlier about stakeholder engagements. So have a program of channeling these views, and these views find their way into proposed laws of the Senate. I can mention, for example, if we have identified 1-2 major issues affecting oversight at the county level, it's possible to propose amendments to the Public Finance Management Act and fix that, including how to facilitate the county assemblies. One other thing, for instance, the Ministry of Devolution, we know, has a substantive role to play in terms of capacity development of county governments. The Senate, I think, needs to be on top of this and see how that is structured and how the funds are expended there. Do they lead to the outcomes that we need? Why is it that we have such a huge capacity deficit in the county assemblies? And this will actually reduce the need to look at very fragmented issues. For instance, what Governor Sang mentioned, looking at the receipts of the governor's car that was washed. Those, I think, should be done at the county level. And on that point, I think it's important to again reflect deeper on county assembly oversight. And my suggestion is, if you try to audit all the issues in all the 47 county assemblies, we will not have time to do that. By the nature of its mandate, the membership of the Senate is actually quite limited, but for a good purpose, as we said, it is a unique role. And maybe what to do going forward is to find a way of engaging with offices like the Auditor General's office so that we have systemic and recurring issues that require national legislative intervention and national oversight. And that means that you identify recurring themes, a general and high-level review of county assembly audit reports and the county executive, identify themes that require oversight at the national level and those that require national frameworks. And of course, those notorious issues, I think you are not limited by any law to look at if especially they concern a particular county. So that was on my fifth point, that we think critically on the legislative plan. And then we allow stakeholder consultation, especially from the institutions and persons affected by those laws, to ventilate views and all that. And I know and understand the kind of competition that has been between the two chambers. I personally was really relieved to see that a two-term senator is heading the National Assembly, and I think you have the first opportunity to unlock that gridlock and ensure, and because I know it's committed to the spirit of devolution, and this would lead to some streamlining of things. We try to ask on devolution issues, because the National Assembly, as we said, has a role to pass laws, all laws, including the ones which the Senate has a primary role, but we realized in the assessment there was very minimal engagement with the two houses on legislative business. I hope that is going to change, because it's going to unlock a lot in the upcoming legislative calendar. Now, my last point is on the emerging jurisprudence from courts regarding devolution, role of the Senate, and all that. My suggestion is that we actively engage in this process. Because looking sometimes at the way courts ventilate issues all the way to the Supreme Court, and depending on the nature of engagement, it actually changes. So therefore, what we hear in the High Court, what we hear in the Court of Appeal, and finally in the Supreme Court, it is fine-tuned and refined as we go so that we have the highest restatement of law. The Court of Appeal judgment regarding the laws that were declared unconstitutional. Of course, I'm really happy that the Senate actually appealed on this issue, because there are, for me, two issues which came out of that judgment, and I won't want to preempt what the Supreme Court will say, but actually should worry every senator. One, the Court of Appeal said a money bill is excluded from the National Assembly. Not just that it originates. If you look at the judgment, it says that National Assembly should move with money bills. And now money bills deal with money. So tell me how many laws which are important that do not deal with how we expend public finances. And I believe that is a point that should be strongly litigated, and we establish a law to say that actually